You ever step outside for some fresh air, expecting a peaceful morning walk, and instead, your boot disappears into 6 inches of churned-up mud? Yeah, that was me. Right there, next to a set of thick tire tracks, carved deep into my soybean field, like some idiot decided to off-road their way through my livelihood. At first, I thought maybe it was a lost delivery truck, or one of the neighbor's teenagers trying to impress someone with bad decision-making skills. But then I followed the trail. It didn't just cut through the edge of the field, it zigzagged across nearly 100 yards, mashing down rows and making a mess that would take weeks to recover. Whoever did this wasn't lost. They were lazy. I muttered a few words my mother wouldn't have approved of and headed back to the house to check the front gate camera. Nothing. That particular stretch didn't face the driveway, or the back road I barely used, which ran along the edge of my land. So, I did what any ticked-off landowner with a little too much time and a good dose of spite would do. I hiked out there with a trail cam and strapped it to the nearest tree like I was setting up for a nature documentary. Except instead of deer, I was hunting Karens. And oh, did I find them? 2 days later. The camera caught a glossy white luxury SUV, one of those models that looks like it's allergic to dirt, zipping straight across my land like it was part of the morning commute. In the front seat, a bleach blonde woman in oversized sunglasses. In the passenger seat, a twin, basically, but with the worse attitude and even bigger sunglasses. They didn't just drive through. They waved at the camera like they were filming an episode of Real Housewives, Rural Edition. My neighbors had seen them too. Apparently, these two had made a habit of cutting across properties on their way to town, calling it the scenic route. That's Karen speak, for we do what we want and dare someone to stop us. I printed out a still from the footage and taped it to a politely worded note. Private property. Please refrain from driving through the field, thank you. Then I walked down to the edge of the back road, where they were clearly entering from, and nailed it to the gate with more hope than confidence. The next morning, I got my answer. The note was gone. The tracks were not. In fact, the new tracks were deeper, more aggressive, like someone had stomped the gas just to make a point, which, of course, they had. These weren't people who took kindly to being told no. These were full-blown Karens, with a V8 engine and a bad attitude. So now I wasn't just dealing with trespassers, I was dealing with petty trespassers. And nothing makes a situation escalate faster than a petty person with a car payment. I stood there in the early morning sun, hands on my hips, boots covered in mud, staring down at the fresh tire ruts like they were a personal insult. You don't mess with someone's land. Not out here. Not where people actually earn a living. From the dirt, it was clear the polite route wasn't going to cut it. And I don't know about you, but when someone treats your property like it's a public sidewalk, the last thing you want to do is sit around and hope they develop basic manners. No, this was going to take more than notes. This was going to take a plan. They showed up like they owned the place, because of course they did. It was around noon when I heard the honking. Not the friendly kind, like a neighbor dropping off eggs. No, this was the aggressive rapid fire. Get out here and bow before me honk. I wiped the sweat off my forehead, came around the barn, and there they were. The Karen sisters in full glory. Matching designer sunglasses, luxury SUV, gleaming like it had never seen gravel, and expressions that screamed my dad's a lawyer. The driver a bleach blonde with frosted lip gloss and a face that looked permanently offended, stepped out and crossed her arms. Her sister mirrored her like they'd practiced in front of a mirror. You left a note, the driver sneered, like I'd committed some war crime. Yes, I said, keeping my voice calm, because you're driving through my crops. She scoffed, waving a manicured hand toward the field like it was decorative grass. It's not your land. That road has been here forever. People use it all the time. I pulled the deed from my back pocket. Yeah, I was that ready and held it out. It's private. Has been for 30 years. There's no easement, no public right-of-way. That's my field. You're trespassing. They didn't even look at the paper. The other one's sunglasses number 2 laughed like I'd told a joke. You can't just own land like that. You don't own nature. Now, I'm all for respecting the planet and hugging the occasional tree, but that argument doesn't hold much water when you're plowing a luxury vehicle through someone's soybeans. And she said it with such smug certainty, like quoting, "A bumper sticker made her a lawyer." I literally do, I said. It's how property works. The driver got back into the SUV, revved the engine like she was in Fast and Furious, Farmland Drift, and looked me dead in the eyes. Then she peeled, out across the gate, around my signs, and straight through the field again. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was intentional. And it hurt to watch, like seeing someone rip pages out of a book you spent years writing. By the time the dust settled, I was still standing there, mouth half open, fists clenched. I called the sheriff's office, gave them everything, the license plate, the footage, the whole Karen monologue. They told me they'd look into it, which is polite country cop speak for, unless they set your barn on fire, we're not doing much. So I tried the neighborhood route, asked around. Turns out I wasn't their first victim. "Oh, those two," said Mr. Harlan from down the road. "Used to blow through my back pasture all the time till I put up a trench. They'll ignore anything short of a wall." Mrs. Peabody chimed in too apparently. The sisters once parked on her garden during a sunset photo shoot and crushed. Her tulips didn't even apologize. Just posted it with hashtag nature vibes. It was clear they had a pattern, entitled, aggressive, and absolutely allergic to consequences. And now, they'd picked my farm as their shortcut to town because, heaven forbid they lose 5 minutes taking the actual road like the rest of humanity. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea, watching the moonlight glint off their latest tire marks. And I knew this wasn't over. They weren't going to stop because of some paper. Not because of reason, law, or neighborly decency. If I wanted them gone, I'd have to speak in a language they understood. Something loud, something expensive, something memorable. They say fences make good neighbors. But whoever said that clearly never met these two, after their little stunt in the field, revving straight through my crops while maintaining direct, unblinking eye contact with me, like it was some kind of challenge. I knew I had to step things up. Notes weren't doing it. Warnings weren't doing it. Logic, absolutely useless. These weren't rational people. They were Karens, and not just any Karens, synchronized Karens, which is somehow worse. So, the next morning, I hit the hardware store like a man on a mission, bought posts, barbed wire, metal signs, and a post-hole digger that looked like it could bury secrets. The guy at the counter raised an eyebrow when I stacked everything on the belt. "Building a zoo?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. "Just trying to keep the wild animals off my land." By noon, I was back on the property line, sweating through my shirt, hammering in a brand new fence along the exact spot they always drove through. I went a step further and placed thick wooden beams behind it. Nothing industrial, but enough to say, "Hey, maybe don't." And then came the signs. Private property. No trespassing. Trespassers will be reported. This is not a road. Turn around, Karen, okay? I didn't actually put that last one up, but I wanted to. Still might. I set up 2 new cameras facing the area directly, wired with motion detection, so I'd get pinged immediately. And as a final little addition, I left a copy of the property survey taped to one of the fence posts, laminated and everything. I didn't want them to claim they didn't know. The next 2 days were blissfully quiet. No new tire marks, no honking, no screeching brakes or perfume clouds wafting in on the wind. Just peace, the way the farm was supposed to be. Birds chirped. The field started healing. I dared to believe, for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, they'd taken the hint. And then the tick-tock dropped. I don't usually go looking for drama online. but a neighbor's teenage daughter showed me the video with wide eyes and a shaky phone screen. There they were, my favorite double features, standing in front of my fence, camera tilted at just the right angle to make them look like freedom fighters facing off against tyranny. This crusty farmer thinks he can block us from using a road just because it belongs to him, one of them said, complete with air quotes. We've been using this path for years. Nobody owns the earth, bro. The other one chimed in with a smug little smirk. Guess we'll just have to go around it. Cut to them literally pushing the edge of the fence aside like it was a shower curtain and peeling off into the field again. Their comments were full of people cheering them on, like this was some sort of rebellion, instead of two grown women trespassing on private property in a Range Rover. I was furious, not surprised, just deeply, bone-tiredly angry. You ever feel that kind of quiet rage? The kind where you don't yell, you just plan. That's where I was. I took screenshots, saved the video, logged the date and time. Then I called my lawyer, my cousin Greg, who's a lawyer in town and owes me a few favors from that time I fixed his busted well pump at midnight. Greg looked over everything and nodded slowly. Yeah, they're toast, he said. This is open and shut trespassing. You've got video, written warnings, survey documents, times, you even laminated stuff. Judges love lamination. But will anything happen? I asked. He shrugged eventually. Civil case is an option, but the wheels of justice turn slow, especially for things like property damage. Too slow, I said, already thinking 3 moves ahead. Greg raised an eyebrow. You're not gonna do anything, ... Dramatic, right? I gave him the most innocent look I could muster. Define dramatic. He just sighed. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal, or at least technically legal. Now look, I'm not a vengeful guy. I believe in fairness, but I also believe in consequences. And these women had coasted through life like it was a theme park ride, where rules were just suggestions. They needed a wake-up call. A big, loud, expensive one. So I got back to work. First, I reinforced the fence. This time with heavy-duty steel mesh, bolted into treated posts with concrete bases. Not the kind of thing you could just push aside. Then I dug out the access point they always used and filled it with a soft patch of topsoil, covering a little surprise, a spike strip. Now before you clutch your pearls, it wasn't illegal. These weren't caltrops or medieval torture devices. Just an old set of tire spikes I had from back when I used to run a junkyard. Blunted, rusty, and hidden just deep enough to ruin a tire or two without injuring anyone. No booby traps, no actual harm, just a wallet-shaped consequence. I set up a new camera. Motion-triggered high race, backed up to the cloud. No chance of we didn't know. And then I waited. 3 days later, I got the alert. They came roaring in just after a drizzle. The ground soft, the field slick. Same SUV, same smug faces. They saw the new fence, paused for half a second, and then gunned it right into the soft patch. The moment those tires hit the spike strip, it was like watching karma in real time. 1 blowout, 2, then the back ones followed. The SUV fishtailed, skidded, and came to a stop right in the middle of the field, steam rising from the hood. Mud splattered up the sides like war paint. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the live stream, and just watched. The screaming started almost immediately. One of them got out, slipped in the mud, and flailed like a cartoon character. The other tried to call someone tow truck, I assumed, but the reception out there is terrible. Eventually, they just sat there, windows up, furious, stuck, and completely defeated. When the tow truck finally arrived an hour later, I made sure to be standing by the gate with a cup of coffee and the biggest grin I could manage without bursting into actual laughter. Can't drive through anymore, I said sweetly. Guess you'll have to take the real road like everyone else. They didn't say a word, just glared. But that was fine. I'd gotten what I wanted. No yelling, no threats, just a good, old-fashioned slice of poetic justice served cold and covered in mud. And best of all, the footage. Yeah, that went viral too. But this time, the internet wasn't on their side. People tore them apart in the comments, calling them everything. From entitled brats to Thelma and Karen. Even the local news picked it up. Suddenly, they weren't rebels. They were punchlines. And me. I slept like a baby that night. Because some people just need to learn the hard way. You don't mess with someone's land, especially not a landowner. With cameras, concrete, and a long memory. The sky was barely awake when I got the ping. Motion detected, camera 3. Field entrance. I was halfway through my first sip of coffee, still in boxers and a t-shirt with a hole in the shoulder, when I bolted to my laptop. Heart pounding like I was defusing a bomb, I clicked the live feed and there it was. White SUV, same polished hood. Same custom vanity plate KGRLZ2. Same duo, behind the windshield, oversized sunglasses, tight ponytails, and that eternal, unshakable confidence that comes from a lifetime of getting your way. Except this time, they were about to learn the difference between shortcut and consequence. They slowed when they saw the new fence. I'd made sure it wasn't just functional, it was intimidating. Galvanized steel mesh, concrete posts, and enough bold red signage to make it look like the perimeter of a top-secret military site. Even someone with half a brain would pause and go, maybe I shouldn't. But these two weren't just ignoring logic, they were declaring war on it. The SUV rolled forward, nice and slow, like a predator stalking prey. The driver leaned out and tapped the horn twice, like she was summoning me. I didn't move. I stayed right where I was, hidden behind the barn wall, camera feed up, volume on, heart hammering in sync with the slow roll of their tires. Then the vehicle stopped. They were maybe 20 feet from the entrance point. The new entrance point. The one I'd designed for this exact moment. The Karen in the driver's seat looked around. You could see the wheels turning in her head, calculating the terrain. The passenger said something, pointing toward the mud-soaked shoulder where the earth dipped just slightly toward my field. Bingo. The driver smirked. She gunned it, and I swear to you, time slowed down. The Range Rover surged forward, tires kicking up mud and shredded bits of old grass. The suspension buckled as it dropped into the shallow ditch and hit the soft patch, my soft patch right over the spike strip I'd buried, 2 inches under the surface. What happened next was beautiful. There wasn't one loud boom. It was more like a wet, angry thunk-thunks as the tires tore open, one after the other. Rubber shredded. Air hissed. The SUV rocked hard to the left, then fishtailed slightly before coming to a dead, defiant stop in the middle of the field. They'd made it 20 yards. 20 glorious, final yards. Silence. Then the door flung open. The driver stepped out first, well, more like slid. She wasn't ready for the mud. Her sleek designer boots had zero grip, and she went down hard, face first. It was like the earth itself reached up and slapped her with a handful of karma. Her sister screamed, part horror, part disgust. She stayed in the vehicle, waving her arms like she expected a drone rescue, or maybe for the car to grow wings and lift off. No such luck. From where I stood, just out of sight, I watched it unfold in real time. The driver scrambled to her feet, dripping in muck, mascara running like war paint. She was shouting something probably about lawsuits, civil rights, or the Geneva Convention, but the sound cut in and out as the wind picked up. They tried everything. They revved the engine. Useless. They rocked the car back and forth. Nope. They got out. Looked underneath, realized all 4 tires were flat, and the undercarriage was resting gently against a patch of angry gravel and humiliation. Eventually, they called someone, and I, like any good host, prepared for the arrival of the tow truck by putting on a clean shirt, pouring another coffee, and strolling casually down the gravel path toward the gate camera slung casually around my neck like a tourist on safari. By the time I arrived, they were sitting on the hood, arms crossed, faces thundercloud dark. The tow guy had just shown up and was already eyeing the scene like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Morning," I said brightly, like we were all just friends running into each other at a farmer's market. The driver stood, slick with dried mud and simmering rage. "You sabotaged the road." "This isn't a road," I said, pointing at the private property sign, which she was literally leaning against. "It's my field, and what you did is called trespassing." She opened her mouth, but before she could unleash whatever monologues she'd been rehearsing, the tow guy cut in. "Ma'am," he said, holding up his phone, "I need to document the location for insurance. You said this happened on a public access path." "Obviously," she snapped. "We drive here all the time." I stepped in and handed him a printed, highlighted property deed and a laminated map. "Actually, this is all privately owned. Here, here, and here. They've been warned multiple times. There's security footage, and I've got timestamps, if you want those too." He blinked. "Oh," the sisters froze. The insurance guy muttered something about needing to call his boss. The sisters started whispering urgently, clearly realizing things weren't playing out the way they thought. And here's the thing, no one tells you about entitlement. It only works if people let it. And I was done letting it. The tow guy shook his head, hooked up their precious SUV, and told them very clearly that insurance wouldn't cover any of it. "You were trespassing, flat tires on private land. That's on you." Their expressions collapsed faster than the tires had. All that fake confidence drained out, leaving nothing but sputtering indignation. "I'll sue," the driver finally said. It sounded more like a question than a threat. "Please do," I said, smiling. "I'll bring the footage and snacks." They left in the cab of the tow truck, faces plastered to the window like angry cats in a carrier. I stood at the gate, watching them disappear down the actual legal road, and took a long, satisfying sip of my coffee. That night, I uploaded the footage. Not because I wanted to humiliate them, okay? Maybe a little, but because I knew they'd try to spin it again. Claim they were harassed, or set up or victims of rural aggression. I wanted the truth out first. The video went viral within hours. Not just because it was satisfying, but because it hit a nerve. People are tired of this kind of behavior of folks who think the world is their playground, and everyone else is just set dressing. The comments were brutal, memes exploded. Someone remixed their tantrum with sad violin music. I didn't even have to say a word. Justice had a camera angle this time, and it looked good in HD. And me. I slept like a rock. The field was quiet again. No more engine roars, no more honking. Just wind, frogs, and the soft sound of healing soil. Sometimes, all it takes to fix a problem is a fence, a camera, and a little mud-soaked reality check. Sometimes, karma just needs 4 flat tires and a YouTube upload button. You'd think. After 4 flat tires, a face first fall into a mud pit, and going viral for all the wrong reasons. The Karen sisters would have learned their lesson, but entitlements, a funny thing, it doesn't just dissolve in embarrassment. It ferments, turns into something sharper, nastier, and just when you think it's all over, it circles back like a raccoon you thought you scared off, but actually just made mad. The video of their glorious downfall, complete with slow-mo tire pops and their meltdown in the mud, made its rounds across local Facebook groups first, then Twitter, then TikTok. Within a day, someone had added dramatic music and edited the footage like a movie trailer. In a world where rules don't apply to everyone, 2 sisters learn what happens when karma drives a tractor. By the end of the week, I had reporters emailing me, not real ones, just click-hungry blog writers asking if I wanted to speak my truth. One even offered to pay me for an exclusive interview. I ignored them all. I wasn't in this for the fame. I just wanted my land back. Still, I won't. Lit was satisfying. Not just because they got stuck, or because their SUV looked like it lost a bar fight with a combine. No, the real win was how the community turned on them. You have to understand these sisters weren't from here. They lived in the next town over, a newer development with custom lawns and HOA newsletters that probably had dress codes. They treated the rural side of things like a lifestyle accessory, something to drive through when it was convenient, take selfies with, and maybe trample on if it saved them 5 minutes. But folks around here, we've got memories like elephants and gossip networks faster than any internet provider. So by the time they showed their faces at the local farmer's market, they were getting side eyes and cold shoulders like they'd keyed everyone's truck. They didn't like that. And true to form, they didn't take it quietly. About a week after the Great Mud incident, I got served an honest-to-God lawsuit. Apparently, they were suing me for emotional distress, property sabotage, and the most laughable one, malicious intent to damage their reputation. I almost dropped my breakfast when I read that part. Their reputation. Lady, you did that all on your own. I called Greg my lawyer cousin, the same one who had warned me not to go to dramatic. He read through the papers, sighed loud enough to shake my eardrum, and said, "All right, time to go on offense. Greg doesn't wear suits. He wears flannel and carries a legal pad like it's a sheriff's badge. But don't let the look fool you, he's sharp. The kind of guy who can quote property law like scripture, and enjoys depositions. A little too much." We filed a counterclaim. Trespassing, property damage, harassment. We had the receipts, emails, camera footage, notes, timestamps, and even the laminated map. Greg smiled when I handed it all over. "Judges love lamination," he said again. The hearing wasn't dramatic, at least not the way they'd probably hoped. No cameras, no audience, just a plain room, a tired judge, and 2 women with fake tans, bad attitudes, and a lawyer who looked like he regretted taking the case 10 minutes in. The Karens tried to play the sympathy card, claimed they were confused about the property lines, said my hostile fencing was an overreaction, tried to paint themselves as victims of some rural vendetta. Their lawyers showed the viral video their meltdown, their SUV stuck in the mud, and tried to spin it like I had set a trap. The judge paused the video, squinted, then asked, "Did the defendant invite you onto his land?" "No," they said. "Did he ever give permission for you to drive through it?" "No," they said again, quieter this time. "Did you ignore the signs?" They were aggressively worded. The judge raised an eyebrow. "That's not illegal." Then Greg stood up and did what he does best. Laid out every document, played every video. Even had satellite images from Google Earth showing the years of property lines. And then, like the cherry on top, he showed their own TikTok, bragging about pushing through my fence. There was a pause after that, a long one. You could practically hear the judge calculating how fast he could wrap this up and go to lunch. In the end, the ruling was simple. Their lawsuit, dismissed with prejudice. Mine, accepted. They owed damages. For the fence, for the destroyed crops, for trespassing, for the time and money I spent dealing with them. Their insurance refused to cover it, citing illegal activity that left the sisters on the hook out of pocket, out of pride, and very much out of allies. They appealed. Of course they did. But appeals cost money, and court takes time, and by then, their local reputation had crumbled like an overcooked biscuit. Businesses didn't want their name attached. Real estate agents whispered stories to new buyers. "You know who used to live in that house, right?" Eventually, they moved. Didn't even hold a garage sale. Just packed up one weekend, SUV, towed out one last time, and vanished like a bad smell after a thunderstorm. I won't pretend I danced in celebration, but I did spend a quiet morning sipping coffee on my porch, watching the new grass grow where their tracks used to be. It came in slowly, Like it had to recover from the trauma too. But it was growing. The cameras are still up. The fence is still standing. And the spike strip, long gone. I don't need it anymore. Because here's the thing no one tells you about: standing your ground. When you do it with patience, evidence, and a little bit of well-placed steel, people remember. Word spreads. Not just about what you did, but why you did it. Since then, I've gotten more visitors than usual. Neighbors dropping by with pies, or just stopping at the gate to say, "Saw that video. Good for you." One old rancher shook my hand and said, "Took guts." Most people would have just let M roll over. But I didn't. And I won't. Because some things like your land, your work, and your right to a little peace and quiet are worth fighting for. And sometimes, all it takes is a camera, a laminated map, and a firm reminder that not everything is theirs for the taking. Let M take the long way from now on.